I first caught wind of Toodee and Topdee at last year's Gamescom Indie Arena booth. Developer Dietz Reeby Dietz Reeby's concept of combining 2D side-scrolling platforming sections with puzzle-centric top-down block pushing sounded incredibly unique. While both block pushers and platformers have been around since the dawn of the dinosaur, the idea of mashing them up really piqued my interest. I'm sort of a big platformer guy, it's no big deal. 2D, 3D, I tried them all out, even when it's Balan Wonderworld. Toodee and Topdee, however, is definitely not a steaming pile of disappointment. It immediately came off as a fresh experience created by the crossing of two oldies. Toodee and Topdee officially released on August 4th, 2021, almost a full year since my initial hands-on with the Gamescom demo. Let's take a look and see if the charm still holds up a full year later. Our story begins with the beginning of all beginnings, the creation of existence. Lone being Aleph was a god of sorts, and set off to fill the emptiness in the universe. He noticed that the universe was shifting erratically, causing imbalance to the newly created worlds. In order to ensure stability for the soon-to-be-born life, Aleph creates a semicolon. That's right, a semicolon. A punctuation mark between two clauses that indicate a pause. Aleph places the semicolon at the center of the solar system. Soon after, he begins encountering universal glitches. In order to correct his mistakes, Aleph forges a new assistant, Toodoo. Get it? Toodoo? Like a to-do list? When nearing completion, Toodoo begins to realize he will no longer be needed. To circumvent his obsolescence, Toodoo steals the semicolon, causing chaos to all planets. This sets up Toodee and Topdee's introduction to one another. The story is told from charming little cutscenes throughout the entire game. These scenes really give Toodee and Topdee a ton of personality. As the name of the title implies, the titular characters are Toodee and Topdee. I know, what a shocker. Toodee controls from a two-dimensional plane and is only able to run and jump like your traditional platformer. Topdee can move 360 degrees in a top-down environment and can pick up, place, and push boxes. This portion gives me very strong Boxel vibes. While both characters are available in each level, players can only control one of them at a time. Switching between their perspectives is as simple as a button press. While Toodee and Topdee's control scheme is easy to grasp, it's also very easy to make mistakes. I found myself switching between characters when my intentions were to simply interact with a block. This really only became an issue late game when the timing of my actions was crucial, and it was frustrating as all hell. Considering the genre mashup that is Toodee and Topdee, the visual design also takes influence. The majority of the game takes on a stunning 2D pixel art style. As someone who really enjoys retro-themed aesthetics, I'm equally as judgmental of them. Toodee and Topdee's landscapes are filled with vivid colors, expertly textured sprites, and are bustling with movement. Considering how overdone pixel art can be in today's day of age, it makes it incredibly difficult for some indie titles to stand out. Thankfully, Toodee and Topdee does. Trust me when I say that there was a lot of polish put into the final release since its initial showing. The levels in Toodee and Topdee are expertly crafted and have a sense of liveliness. It's almost as if the worlds are truly lived in. A 2D game that feels lived in? That just sounds like something a crazy person would say. Visually, I'd put Toodee and Topdee up there with other retro-inspired juggernauts in the indie scene, like Axiom Verge, Celeste, and Fez. That's saying something. I mean, Fez! Our duo's quest consists of 5 chapters, each inhabiting a different world with differing themes. These range from lush jungles, ancient ruins, mechanical cog-filled temples, glitchy test chambers, and more. Each world also brings their own hazards that add on to the puzzles. Examples include enemies that follow either character's movement and must be manipulated to interact with objects, shadow figures that clone movement and must be similarly manipulated, and one of my favorite inclusions, portal blocks. These blocks work exactly as you'd expect based on what I'm getting at here. They allow either character to pass through them to the other block. Toodee has the benefit of gravitational momentum from his ability to jump into the portals. I can't help but acknowledge the portal influence here, especially since it works so well. These mechanics and more keep the experience feeling fresh and exciting. While these elements add challenge to the overall experience, the difficulty of the actual levels themselves vary. This brings me to one of the biggest issues I experienced while playing Toodee and Topdee: difficulty imbalance. While each succeeding chapter ramps up the difficulty at a fair and gradual pace, the issue lies within certain levels themselves. This little problem could be fixed with a patch that slightly alters the level order, but that's just my 2 cents. While these minor difficulty spikes presented a challenge, it was nothing I couldn't solve. Attaboy. Toodee and Topdee also mixes up the fun levels with a world boss at the end of each chapter. To defeat these bosses, they must take a hit from Topdee's block 3 times, clearing all 3 of their heart pieces. Each of the bosses require a different usage of Toodee and Topdee's switching abilities to actually cause them damage. These battles mix up the gameplay and present a fun and feisty experience. Towards the end of the game, gameplay completely changes. I don't want to give anything away, as I really don't want to be that guy and spoil the experience. I will say, however, that the last few levels were incredibly difficult. Probably 3 of the most difficult levels in the entire game. These sections are best experienced blindly without knowing anything else. While Toodee and Topdee has a very retro feel, it's still very much a modern game. While the difficulty of the game can be attributed to its old school design, for less experienced gamers, Toodee and Topdee offers accessibility options. These are found within the pause menu under difficulty. These range from extra lives to slowing down the game's speed. Also included are additional powers that will help ease the challenge. Air jumps, for example, give Toodee the ability to double jump, or spam jump the guy and float around like Kirby hopped up on a bunch of blue Sour Patch Kids. Actually, is it just me, or does Toodee look like a blue Sour Patch Kid? Getting back to the accessibility options, Topdee also receives some love. He can be granted the ability to telekinetically pick up boxes from a distance, often negating huge portions of the puzzle. He can also be given super strength, which allows him to pick up stone blocks that were previously only able to be pushed. Overall, these abilities create new solutions to the puzzles and make them much more approachable. Accessibility options aren't typically seen in smaller indie titles, so its inclusion adds an extra layer of polish to the overall experience and makes it much more accessible. We need to take a moment to truly appreciate the music of Toodee and Topdee. The whole soundtrack was composed by one individual musician/screamo vocalist, Kajnoon. Kajnoon combines synthesized chiptunes with influence from modern genres such as pop, rock, and lo-fi. The upbeat level tracks and intense energy-driven music playing during boss encounters are almost euphoric. This musical mashup of genres meshes well with the modern retro visuals and adds a ton of variety. Just listen to these 2 tracks from different levels. They sound like they could be from entirely different games, but they still retain a familiar feel. This incredibly well-composed soundtrack quickly became one of my favorites to come from an indie game. The entire soundtrack is available right now on Bandcamp as a digital album. For $5, I highly recommend picking it up. It's truly a modern retro musical marvel and should not go unappreciated. I'll leave a link to the album in the description. Toodee and Topdee took me somewhere between 4 to 5 hours to complete the main story. After completion, I went back through previous levels to collect red and blue ladybugs. These are acquired by completing levels within certain goals. Red ladybugs are collected by completing the level within a certain time frame, whereas getting the blue ladybugs require limiting the number of times the characters are swapped between. This presents a great challenge and adds a ton of replayability. For bug collecting purposes, I'd highly recommend taking advantage of the accessibility options. Using these features really changes up the way Toodee and Topdee feels to play. There's additional secrets to unlock after completing the main game, but I really don't want to spoil that for you either. Instead, let me spoil the ending a little bit. Hi there, I'm Frank, editor here at GameFrank. I just wanted to express how bad of an idea spoiling the ending would be. I did actually spoil a little bit of it in my written review, but I am not doing that in the video. If you don't care about spoilers, I'll leave a link to the written review in the description below. Toodee and Topdee offers a very touching experience, especially if you're actually following along with the storyline throughout the game. I just get an overall feel-good vibe, which is definitely needed in these trying times. While the initial concept appears to be simple on the surface, the end result is anything but. By uniquely combining 2 staples in the gaming pantheon, Diet's Reeby impacted both the indie scene and the puzzle genre as a whole. Toodee and Topdee is currently only available on Steam, but I wouldn't be surprised to see future console versions down the road. I personally think this game would be an amazing fit for the Nintendo Switch. The nature of its pick up and play level design would translate very well to a handheld system. I guess next year those who end up with a Steam Deck will be able to play it portably, but I wouldn't want to wait that long. If you have a PC, I highly encourage picking up Toodee and Topdee. Hey guys, thanks again for watching this video. If you liked it, leave a like and leave a comment in the comment section below. All that stuff is really appreciated and definitely helps encourage me to make more content like this.